Paul, listen to me. I don't even like dogs!
I'll leave. I'll just get my things now.
We could still be friends. I thought an annulment would be the easiest. You just have to sign it. I'm sorry, Paul. Paul! Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
The movie takes place after World War II ends, and the transports bring survivors home. Sergeant Paul Sutton steps onto a dock with the modest wish to start a family with his wife Betty, whom he married just before his deployment. Paul's hopeful smile curdles as he scans the crowd to look for his wife. Then again, slower, careful, like maybe he just missed her, in the blur of banners and bouquets. He hasn't, men on either side are swallowed by family. He is left standing in the draft. Their embraces make the welcome as loud for everyone else. And silent where he's standing, he realizes Betty isn't there to greet him. He trudges to the apartment they shared before he was deployed, touches the locket that holds her photograph, and opens the door. Inside, Betty is wearing pale green lingerie. Seemingly startled by Paul's arrival, she then rushes to him and pulls him into an embrace. Betty says she didn't know that Paul would be coming home today.
When I didn't see you on the dock, I thought...
I didn't know you were coming today.
Which confuses him because he had told her about his arrival in the letters that he sent to her almost every day throughout his 4-year deployment. Betty sheepishly reveals that she stopped reading his letters because the gruesome battle scenes were too much for her. In her defense, she had saved them, showing Paul a trunk full of unopened envelopes. Never opened them after the first few. This stings Paul's feelings, because writing letters to his wife became a lifeline for him. In the battlefield, however, he swallows his hurt and forgives, because love is the only thing he wants. Immediately, Betty talks about the economic boom, and how she managed to persuade the old company Paul used to work for into hiring him again. However, Paul doesn't want to sell chocolates anymore.
I don't want to go back to selling chocolate.
You've got something better.
He says that he wrote of the future he dreamed for them, a home full of children and quiet mornings, in the letters that Betty did not open. Meanwhile, Betty speaks only of money and the nicer things it buys, and insists he return to selling chocolates, because more money means more happiness. Paul relents and says yes to her demands. As they share a passionate reunion, by dawn, Paul is back in uniform, kissing her sleeping forehead, and leaving for Sacramento to continue his work as a chocolate salesman. On the train, he notices a poised, yet anxious young woman wrestling with a suitcase overhead. It falls down, spewing its contents, including a framed picture of her and her father that breaks. Being a gentleman, Paul springs up to help. They lurch with the train's sway, and he ends up awkwardly on top of her before she turns pale and vomits on his uniform. He doesn't mind, as it is an accident, and scrubs the mess in the bathroom without complaint. Back in his seat, Paul falls asleep, only to be haunted by war flashbacks from his deployment. He wakes in relief that it was all a dream, but the beautiful lady is gone. He hops off in San Francisco to take a bus to Sacramento, and luckily comes across the same woman again. She wonders why Paul is taking a bus to Sacramento, when the train will also pass by the city. It turns out that their tickets were swapped during their encounter in the train. The woman feels bad for all the trouble she has caused Paul, but of course, Paul brushes it off as it's not her fault. She introduces herself as Victoria Aragon, a graduate student heading home to her family's Napa Valley vineyard. Then 2 drunk men come in and begin harassing her.
My buddy Herman, and you're,
Not interested.
No, not after she got to know me.
Lady doesn't want to be bothered.
All soldier instincts snap awake, and he wastes no time in calling them out and beating them up. This leads to the 3 men getting thrown out of the bus. Paul walks along the road towards his destination, but is surprised to find Victoria sitting with her luggage in the middle of the road.
I'm sorry about the boss. I feel terrible.
You're waiting for a ride.
No, a miracle.
Seeing that she's in tears, Paul asks what's wrong. She confesses that she's scared to go home and face her father because she got pregnant by a professor who had left her behind with no accountability.
I don't know your father, but I don't think that just because some free spirit broke up with you...
I'm pregnant.
She thinks that her father will disown her if she comes home without a husband.
Victoria, look at the positive side.
Oh, I will kill anyone who dishonors my family. If I come home this way, without a husband, he'll kill me.
So Paul wants to help her and her baby. He offers a temporary plan.
Well, how about if you do show up with a husband?
He will pretend to be her husband for a night, so she can enter her home without disgrace. He does admit that he is married and insists the deception will end the next day. And Victoria, desperate and weary, accepts.
Just go blank.
You're very kind to do this for me.
And the baby. I'm doing it for the both of you.
As they approach the vineyard, the hills sit atop rolling clouds, bathed in sunlight. Its beauty takes Paul's breath away, and Victoria says her family calls their land Las Nubes.
Or the clouds.
We call it Las Nubes. It means the clouds.
Paul slips a ring from a piece of chocolate onto her finger, and then his own, in lieu of wedding bands. Suddenly, rifle shots crack the quiet. The two seek shelter, but tension melts when Victoria sees that it's her father, who is holding the gun. Hello. Victoria's father erupts in furious disbelief. When Victoria introduces Paul as her husband, he storms towards the house. Calling out for his wife, the rest of the household and staff gather. Due to the racket Alberto is making, despite that, everyone greets Victoria with cheerful hugs as she finally returns home. Following Alberto's rage, she also announces the news of her marriage to Paul. Everyone in her family is surprised by the news. Alberto's rage intensifies when he learns Paul sells chocolate for a living.
What do you do?
I sell chocolate.
You are the head of the family. Say something.
But in the household swirl, Victoria's mother, Marie, and grandmother, Guadalupe, temper the storm with hospitality, while Victoria's grandfather, Don Pedro, embraces the stranger outright, even praising Paul's chocolates, where Alberto interrogates him about his past.
Sutton, where are you from?
Moline, Illinois.
And your parents?
I never knew my parents.
Oh,
I grew up in a home. I meant an orphanage.
wonderful.
When he finds out that Paul is an orphan, he sneers at a man with no past, has no future, is no fit to marry his daughter with the family's respected Mexican bloodline. Paul holds himself steady, absorbs the humiliation, thanks them for dinner, and slips outside for air. Victoria finds him in the dock and apologizes, but he seems to somewhat understand where Alberto's rage comes from.
I'm sorry.
He doesn't pull any punches, does he? When I was a kid, every night I'd climb up to the roof of the orphanage and I'd make a wish on every star I could see.
That's no reason for him to treat you that way.
And I was gonna say something, but a strange man comes into my house, tells me he's married my only daughter and I'm the last to know. Probably act the same way.
That night, their charade earns them Victoria's parents' master bedroom, though Paul chooses to sleep on the floor out of respect.
It's the root of our lives. Now that you are part of all this, a part of us, you are an orphan no longer.
Paul is moved enough to accept the warmth, but still says he cannot stay until the harvest day
I
tomorrow.
can't. I have commitments.
Don Pedro relents, but reveals to Paul that Alberto predicted his departure and Victoria will be the one to pay the price.
He said you would not stay.
Who did?
Alberto.
So to avoid Victoria getting hurt, Paul decides to stay for just one more day. Harvest arrives in Las Nubes like a holiday. Victoria's younger brother, Pedro, returns home from Stanford and greets Paul with open arms. The whole family and workers pour into the vineyard to pick the grapes, laughing and trading songs. Paul watches Alberto's efficient gestures, copies them, and naturally falls into a friendly competition that ends with both men lugging a box, each brimming with grapes. At nearly the same instant, the mood expands into celebration. The musicians tune up, and the women step into the great wooden vat to crush grapes with bare feet. Even Victoria gets to join, as she's a married woman now. At least to the others, the women pull Paul into the vat, encouraging the couple to dance together. Amidst the grapes, they drift close, in a gravity entirely separate from the lie they're portraying. Later soaked in juice and music. They finally kiss in private, with a hunger that surprises them both, only for Paul to draw back, as if burned. He admits that he loves her more than he expected to love anyone, but he is still a married man after all, and he cannot betray both Victoria and his wife.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Shocked and saddened, Victoria turns her face away and sobs long into the night, while Paul sleeps alone on the sofa with a headache. The knowledge that the moral path sometimes runs through heartbreak. He is woken up by Pedro and Alberto arguing in the living room. Pedro thinks they should modernize their winery, and Paul suggests bank loans as a safety line during bad years. Alberto snaps, telling Paul to mind his own business. Amidst the quarrel, Alberto comments that Paul and Victoria don't seem like an actual married couple, especially now that Paul had slept on the sofa. Paul defends himself by saying that Victoria's well-being is his business because he cares about her. The truth is, she came home because she loves her family.
I told you, stay out of our business.
Preparing to leave, Paul notices Victoria clutching her stomach in pain. He rushes to her side and offers to stay for one more night to help her through the stressful quarrels with her father. But she refuses. She says that this was not his problem in the first place.
No one can help me. It's not your problem.
She leaves and he pursues her, but instead finds Alfredo in the barrel storage room. Alberto once again reminds Paul that he'll never acquire the winery, despite marrying Victoria, which Paul responds to by questioning whether Alberto even loves his daughter. Alberto insists that he works hard because he loves his children, so Paul tells him to start showing it instead.
Why can't you just love her?
You know nothing about my daughter.
Can't you see that? How wonderful, how special she is?
Victoria overhears the argument and joins in. She doesn't understand why Alberto is so controlling, or why he hates Paul so much. Alberto stands his ground, but his daughter is tired of his temper. She asks whether she should leave the family property, but Alberto says he only wants the truth. Paul is about to leave once again. Don Pedro coaxes him into drinking brandy that he made himself. They get drunk together and start to sing a romantic Latin song. Don Pablo teaches Paul the lyrics so he can serenade Victoria from below her window with a mariachi band. Paul sings with a raw, cracked earnestness that draws sleep from every room. Even Alberto begins to wonder if he had been too harsh on Paul, since he now believes the man truly loves Victoria. Don Pablo says that the sign of Victoria's acceptance is if her bedroom lamp turns on, and when the last note trembles away, the window stays dark. Paul walks away in defeat, but then sees the glow after a late pause. Paul, who believes in duty even more than he believes in hope, decides to leave anyway. He ends up in the harvest festival the next day, since the bus will be departing from the area. Meanwhile, Victoria and her family arrive for the blessing of the wine. Conducted by Father Couture, she sees him and approaches with 2 glasses of wine for a toast. Alberto joins, introducing Paul to the priest as his son-in-law, and announces a wedding to take place that evening. Shocked, Paul whispers to Victoria that they cannot continue this unsustainable lie, and she agrees to tell the truth herself. Before she returns to the family, he gave her his Bronze Star medal as a gift for the child she is carrying.
What did you get it for?
Courage under fire.
You're the most honorable man I have ever known.
She then walks to Alberto and confesses the pregnancy, and the fact there is no husband. While the family processes the news, Paul slips out of the celebration. He hitches a ride to Florida, where he once again falls asleep into a nightmare. In it, he and Victoria are holding hands together with a child when an explosion hits, startling him awake. Still in the car, he finally arrives at Betty's apartment. When he enters, he is shocked to find Betty is in bed with another man. She tells Paul not cruelly, but coldly, that the life he wants is not the life she will ever want, that she has already filed annulment papers and he should sign them. Paul leaves with papers in hand, dazed at first, but joy quickly returns to him as he can return to Victoria now that he is free from his marriage.
Paul! Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
He immediately hitchhikes back towards Napa, and by the time he reaches Los Noobs, it's already evening. Alberto is deep in drink with his men, brittle with wounded pride. Paul wakes him up and stands openly to ask permission to marry Victoria, pledging also to be a father to the child she carries. Alberto reminds him in anger that he is a married man, and despite Paul showing him the annulment papers, Alberto still demands his gun, still barehanded. He tries to fight Paul, who dodges his assaults easily in the scuffle that follows. An oil lamp that Alberto hurls towards Paul misses the target and sets the edges of the vineyard on fire. The fire quickly spreads from just one tree onto the next, and soon enough, the whole field is burning. Paul moves quickly, dipping his jacket in water and trying to put out the fire. The whole family and workers soon arrive, including Victoria, who sets aside her surprise to join Paul in stopping the fire. The family and workers run to save what can be saved. Pedro, who also joined the effort, unfortunately caught his clothes on fire and panics amidst the screams of horror. Paul soaks his clothes in a barrel and sprints toward the heat, where Pedro is, and Paul wraps him in a wet cloth and smothers the blaze at his legs. Alberto, who was stunned because of shock and remorse at first, now charges into the rows until Don Pedro drags him back. In the end, the fire was too widespread to stop, engulfing the entirety of Las Nubias. The night burns itself out, and dawn shows the cost without mercy. Black stubble where a green river once ran, and smoke sketches over the chapel's hill. The Aragon family and the workers all weep. seeing their home and livelihoods vanish in one night. Don Pedro grieves. What he believes is gone. Not only the harvest or a season's profits, but the literal root of the family's identity. They all believe that the ancient vine on the hilltop must have turned to cinder. With everything else seeing the grief-stricken family, Paul decides to do what may be too painful for the others to do. He hikes to the hill with a shovel and stubborn optimism, kneels in ash and digs with careful hands, until he lifts the blackened root of the ancient vine from the ground. It looks dead, with charred skin flaking like old bark, but he brings it down to Alberto anyway. Paul asks him to cut into it, to see if the fire has reached into the core of the plant. The older man stares at Paul for a beat, and then frantically draws his knife. He pares away a strip of burnt bark and gasps at a shred of hope. The core had survived the fire, and that small piece of life restores courage to the circle gathered around them. Don Pedro cries out that Las Nubias has not ended after all, with a laughter that is still followed by grateful tears. Alberto turns to say thank you to Paul. Despite his prior rage and mistreatment, he finally accepts that Paul is a good man with a brave heart. As thanks, he cuts a living piece from the root and hands it to Paul to replant, not as hired help but as family. This symbolizes the trust that Alberto now holds for Paul to help their family restore their heritage, their land, and their livelihood. In the hush that follows the discovery, Paul takes Victoria's hand and slides a real ring onto her finger, and the family women, men workers who have earned the right to celebrate, cheers as the couple seal their promise with a kiss. The priest's blessing from the day before echoes in memory. Musicians have nothing left to play. The fields are bare, and yet hope feels less like a mood than like an action. The deliberate work of planting what remains and tending it with patience until new growth rises.